بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. As you know, Imam Ghazali was speaking about the heart and how three things are really important and how they should be cured and how they are considered to be the mothers of all of the other sins, of all of the other blameworthy traits of the heart. So he talks about the three, which is, one was the jealousy, the hasad, another one was the ujb, kibr and fakhr. So he talks about, وَأَمَّا الْعُجْبُ وَالْكِبْرُ وَالْفَخْرُ فَهُوَ الدَّاءُ الْعُضَالُ وَهُوَ نَظْرُ الْعَبْدِ إِلَى نَفْسِهِ بِعَيْنِ الْعِزِّ وَالْإِسْتِعْظَامِ وَنَظْرُهُ إِلَى غَيْرِهِ بِعَيْنِ الذُّلِّ وَالْإِسْتِحْقَارِ. This is pride and arrogance, and being haughty. Fakhr is kind of being haughty or arrogant. فَهُوَ الدَّاءُ الْعُضَالُ. This is also a chronic disease. وَهُوَ نَظَرُ الْعَبْدِ. It is a man's looking at himself or considering himself with the eye of self-glorification and self-importance. Considering oneself to be big, oneself to be important. And his consideration of others, but at the same time his consideration of others with the eye of contempt and humiliation, dhul wal istihqar, to look at others in a contemptful way, in a contempted way, and consider them to be humiliated or more degraded than he is. وَنَتِيجَتُهُ عَلَى اللِّسَانِ أَنْ يَقُولَ أَنَا وَأَنَا كَمَا قَالَ إِبْلِيسُ اللَّعِينُ وَأَنَا خَيْرٌ مِّنْهُ خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. And normally the result of such an approach to things is that a person begins to say, ana, everything is me, everything is about me, or I and I. And this is very similar to what Iblis, the accursed, said when he was told to bow down in front of Adam alayhi salam. He said, I am better than he, thou hast created me of fire, but he has been created of clay. You've created him from clay, you've created me from fire, and basically fire rises, clay is considered to be subdued. But obviously we know the conclusion of that. So this concept of ana, in Arabic you call it ananiya, I-ness, or to consider that I am the one, I am it, as they say in England. وَثَمَرَتُهُ فِي الْمَجَالِسِ. Now this is where he says ana, that's what it does to a person personally. Like he's always thinking even within himself that it's me, I'm the one, I should be the one, I should take the position, I should be in authority, I should take the leading role, etc., etc. In everything that they do, thinking everybody else to be just completely degraded. And وَثَمَرَتُهُ فِي الْمَجَالِسِ. However, when you're in a gathering, then some of the ways that this will show itself and manifest itself is الترفع والتقدم وطلب التصدر في المحافل. So in society or among others, the fruits of this will be self-exaltation. I mean, he's using the word fruit, but that's not really, in English I don't think that's a good term, because normally the fruits of something is more of a positive kind of deal. We'll probably say the kind of, the result of this or the consequence of this or the manifestation of this is self-exaltation and self-advancement, to want to exalt oneself and advance oneself, and the endeavor to be foremost in discussions and resentment when what one says is contradicted. So if you feel, if we feel that way, that we just cannot take when somebody else, you cannot just take when somebody else has to say something that you did not know or you did not get, or he belied you or said what you said was incorrect or proved that it was incorrect. That is really, really important. I mean, for example, one person who maybe knows the news very well. I mean, there was an experience that we had with this kind of a thing. Any piece of information, I mean, because the person would read the news frequently and in depth, he would think that everything that he knows is, everything that he says is correct, And on many occasions, because it was just so much information for the person, I mean, he couldn't always be correct. He was proven to be wrong, but he wouldn't take it. It was like he was so confident about what they knew, what he knew. So this kind of a feeling may come from haughtiness, may come from this this self-confidence in a sense. I mean, of course, it's a good thing, and we should have self-confidence to a certain degree. Otherwise, we won't be able to perform any tasks. We won't be able to achieve anything, because we do need to have confidence in ourselves. But this is a kind of a confidence where, in light of any other evidence as well, even in front of any other evidence, we're not ready to listen to anything, because we just think that what we're saying is absolutely correct, and we're not even willing to look at the other person's opinion or whatever it is. This is actually a sign of the Day of Judgment as well. There's a hadith which says that one of the signs, or one of the things that you'll see before, in which things will be very different, is i'jabul mar'i bira'yihi, which is for a person to be very stubborn with his own opinion, stubborn with his own opinion. And that's really serious, for his own opinion. And this is, it's okay if a person has the right to hold an opinion, but nowadays we have opinions about everything just because of the availability of data and ma'lumat. This is not necessarily knowledge that we have access to all everywhere, in terms of all of these books and everything that are around. This is just all data. This is all information. It's only when we actually do something with that information that it becomes true knowledge of the heart, right? So it's really important to understand this. It's really important to understand this, so that we don't falsely think that what we have is actually very valuable. I mean, it is valuable in the sense that it could become a potential source of our reward and our salvation. But that's when you turn it into knowledge. When you turn it into knowledge is when you follow this book, for example, when he talks about that knowledge and how it needs to become manifest in one's life and how one needs to act upon it. So that's really the true point here. So you need self-confidence, but it shouldn't lead one to think that always they're right and everybody else is wrong. As the hadith says, i'jabul mar'i bira'yihi. Now nowadays, as I said, with all of the data that's going around, people who don't even have the right to hold an opinion about something because they're just not professionals in that subject, but they've just read maybe a book or an idiot's guide or something, or just read an article about it sometimes, or a well-written article. They think that they are an authority on that subject, and then they want to hold opinions and insist on them. This is really something that we should all think about, that do we have this thing about holding our own opinion in such a way that we're not ready to listen to anything. And again, being confident about what one knows, and that is a good thing, right? As long as it's not abused in a sense that it doesn't make you blind to listening to others, or make you blind to the fact that we could be wrong in certain cases. In certain cases, we could be wrong. Now, sometimes you may approach a situation where you think you're absolutely right about something, right? But the other person thinks that you're wrong, or that they've got information to state otherwise, or to prove otherwise. And that's fine. There's no point insisting unless you're able to prove it at that point. I mean, obviously, truth should be manifest unless it leads to some fitna that is even greater than that. It leads to some kind of really negative connotations. So the way to do it is to kind of be very elegant about it and say, oh, okay, I'll check it up again, and then actually go and find the evidence for what you said, or find the proof of what you're trying to say. That will give, and then to go and prove it, that will actually give you much more respect that way, because you did not try to remain stubborn on it, or you can just say, let's leave it alone. For example, if there's an argument about something and nobody's seeing eye to eye, then it might be a good idea just to kind of back off for a while sometimes, right? And say, okay, well, let's look into it, or let's look at it again, with a cooler mind, or so on and so forth. So these are obviously things that we all can deal in, we can use in different ways depending on what problems we have, or what we have to confront every day. وفي المحاورة الاستنكاف من أن يرد كلامه عليه. The problems of this disease that he's talking about, he talks about how it would manifest itself when you're among people, and then he's talking about how it will manifest itself when you're speaking to somebody. Right? So he's saying that when you're talking to somebody, فِي الْمُحَاوَرَةِ الْإِسْتِنْكَافُ مِنْ أَنْ يُرَدَّ كَلَامُهُ عَلَيْهِ, that you, in discussions, there's resentment when what one says is contradicted. Right? وَالْمُتَكَبِّرُ هُوَ الَّذِي إِذَا وَعِذَ أَنِفَ وَإِذَا وَعَظَ عَنَّفَ. The arrogant one is he who, when he gives advice, he harshly criticizes, but when he receives it, is dismissive. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. One is that when he criticizes others, is just so confident about oneself, right? That it leads them to criticize. It leads them to criticize much more strongly than is required. Okay, where they just go on for about an hour or something, just keep criticizing in the harshest terms or whatever. But when they're personally criticized, they're not willing to accept it. They're dismissive of that. Okay. Now sometimes you could be more on one side and not the other side. For example, you may be very critical and so on, or very harsh in your criticism sometimes. But when you receive criticism, you're not necessarily dismissive. Or sometimes some people, they don't criticize others, but they're very dismissive when it comes to when it comes to criticize, when somebody criticizes them. So these are manifest in different ways, but obviously if a person is both, then that most likely is coming from a great arrogance, where not ready to listen to any criticism of their criticism upon themselves, but are willing to hand out severe criticism of others. وَالْمُتَكَبِّرْ هُوَ الَّذِي إِذَا وَعِذَ أَنِفَ وَإِذَا وَعَظَ أَنَّفَ وَكُلُّ مَنْ يَرَى نَفْسَهُ خَيْرًا مِنْ أَحَدٍ مِنْ خَلْقِ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ فَهُوَ مُتَكَبِّرٌ. Imam Ghazali actually just sums it up here. He says that anybody who sees themselves to be more excellent, better than anybody else from among the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then that person is a mutakabbir. That person has pride and arrogance. بَلْ يَنْبَغِي أَن تَعْلَمَ أَنَّ الْخَيِّرَ مَنْ هُوَ خَيِّرٌ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى فِي الدَّارِ الْآخِرَةِ. He then explains why that's the case, why any person who thinks themselves better than anybody else is considered to be arrogant, is because you should know, it is necessary for you to know, that the most excellent person, that the good man, that you should realize that the good man is he who is good in Allah's sight. You should realize that the khayyir means the good, excellent person is the one who is good according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of the hereafter. But the problem with that is, it is hidden. The complication with that is, it is hidden. Right? وَهُوَ مَوْقُوفٌ عَلَى الْخَاتِمَةِ. And that is all contingent on the way a person dies. That's all contingent on the sealing state of a person. So we don't really know what's going to happen to us tomorrow. So even though we may think that today we are better than somebody else, however, tomorrow what happens, and whether we have a fall from grace as such, and Allah protect us, we should always read, Allahumma inna na'udhu bika min khizyi ad-dunya wa adhab al-akhirah. Oh Allah, protect me from the humiliation in this world and punishment of the hereafter. Punishment of the hereafter. Because we don't really know what's going to happen. So even today, if I'm in a better position than anybody else, I'm not sure what's going to happen tomorrow. And then he will give us a way to look at this. Imam Ghazali will give us a way to look at this when dealing with different types of people. If we have this problem about thinking that we're better than different types of people, he will give us a way to understand that as well. So that's the main thing. We don't really know what's going to happen tomorrow. So really that's what counts. So even if I'm better than somebody today, in terms of the hereafter, that's not guaranteed, right? But we hope to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah give us all a good place in paradise. So, وَاعْتِقَادُكَ فِي نَفْسِكَ أَنَّكَ خَيْرٌ مِّنْ غَيْرِكَ. For you to think about yourself that you're better than somebody else, جَهْلٌ مَهْضٌ, it becomes complete ignorance. For you to think yourself to be better than anybody else proves by this that you're completely ignorant, because really what you're considering yourself to be better in, that really is not really applicable. So that's complete and sheer ignorance. Then he says, بل ينبغي ألا تنظر إلى أحد إلا وترى أنه خير منك وأن الفضل له عليك وتزدري نفسك. In fact, it's much more healthy and necessary for you. Whenever you look at somebody, you look at them in a way that you think that they are better than you. See, that has more of a potential of benefit. That has more benefit for a person, for people to think that way, that when you look at somebody, you consider them to be better than you, وَأَنَّ الْفَضْلَ لَهُ عَلَيْكَ, and that they have some excellence above you, وَتَزْدَرِي نَفْسَكَ, and that you look down upon your own self. The benefit of that is that you'll try to improve yourself. the benefit of that is that we'll have self-reflection over our sins, our faults, our problems, and try to correct them. When you think we're better than somebody else and we already think we're up there, we don't need to really correct ourselves. فَإِن رَأَيْتَ صَغِيرًا. Now he'll tell us how to deal with different types of people if we have this problem with them. فَإِن رَأَيْتَ صَغِيرًا. When you see a smaller person, when you see a younger person, قُلْتَ هَذَا لَمْ يَعْصِ اللَّهِ. And you think you're better than them for some reason, you can say, this little kid, this child has not even been disobedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a way that it's responsible and recorded, because children are ma'soom until they become baligh. They're considered to be inerrant until they and no sin of theirs is necessarily written until they become baligh, right? Wa ana asaytu. Whereas you think that he has not, or she has not, this little kid has not disobeyed Allah, whereas I have disobeyed Allah. فَلَا شَكَّ أَنَّهُ خَيْرٌ مِنِّي. So there's no doubt that he is better than me. That kid is better than me. That child is better than me. وَإِن رَأَيْتَ كَبِيرًا. If you see somebody who's older than you, قُلْتَ هَذَا خَيْرٌ مِنِّي. You should say that this person is better than me. عَبَدَ اللَّهَ قَبْلِي. He was able to worship Allah before me. وَإِن رَأَيْتَ عَالِمًا. If you see a scholar, if you see a person of knowledge, قُلْتَ هَذَا قَدْ أُعْتِيَ مَا لَمْ أُعْتَ. That this person's been given what I have not been given. وَبَلَغَ مَا لَمْ أَبْلُغ. And he's been able to reach positions that I have not been able to reach, or amounts of knowledge that I have not been able to reach. وَعَلِمَ مَا جَهِلْتُ. And he knows that which I know not. فَكَيْفَ أَكُونُ مِثْلَهُ. How can I be like him? وَإِنْ كَانَ جَاهِلًا. If a person is jahil that you're dealing with, and it's you're a scholar, or you're a person of some amount of knowledge, قُلْتَ. Then your approach will be هَذَا عَصَى اللَّهَ تَعَالَى بِجَهْلٍ وَأَنَا عَصَيْتُ اللَّهَ بِعِلْمٍ. That this person has disobeyed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala out of his ignorance. But when I disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I have knowledge, and despite that I still disobey. فَحُجَّةُ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى عَلَيَّ أَكْبَرُ. Hence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has more evidence against me, has greater proof against me because of my situation. وَمَا أَدْرِي بِمَا يُخْتَمْ لِي وَبِمَا يُخْتَمْ لَهُ. And who knows, how do I know, who knows how my sealing state is going to be and how his sealing state is going to be. So we don't really know, because although I am more knowledgeable today than that person, right? Then basically it doesn't mean that tomorrow it'll be the same. That person could gain much more knowledge tomorrow, and I may not stand up to my knowledge tomorrow. وَإِن رَأَيْتَ كَافِرًا. Now, you might think that all of this relates to Muslims, or about if they're kafir. وَإِن رَأَيْتَ كَافِرًا. If you see a kafir, قُلْتَ لَا أَدْرِي عَسَىٰ أَن يُسْلِمَ وَيُخْتَمْ لَهُ بِخَيْرِ الْعَمَلِ. Subhanallah, he covers everything here. Then you'll say that, I don't know, maybe that it's possible that he could become a Muslim tomorrow, and that he has some of the best sealing states, or his life ends with a very good action. وَيَنْسَلُّ بِإِسْلَامِهِ مِنْ ذُنُوبِهِ كَمَا تَنْسَلُّ الشَّعْرَةُ مِنَ الْعَجِينِ. And that because of his becoming Muslim, he comes out, he slithers out of his sins, he slithers away from his sins, or he basically takes away, he shaves away his sins, just like a hair is pulled out very clearly from dough. It's as simple as that. The person just has to become a believer, and all of his sins could be forgiven. وَأَمَّا أَنَا. As for myself, فَعَسَىٰ أَن يُضِلَّنِي اللَّهُ فَأَكْفُرُ. And as for myself, it is possible, it is a possibility, among possibilities, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala misguide me, and I become a kafir, and Allah protect us. فَيُخْتَمْ لِي بِسُوءِ الْعَمَلِ. And then my sealing state is with a bad action. فَيَكُونُ هُوَ غَدًا مِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ وَأَكُونُ أَنَا مِنَ الْمُبْعَدِينَ. Whereas tomorrow that person is then going to become much from among those who are intimate with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I will become one of those who are far from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who are distant from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even with a kafir, that should be our approach. Okay? Now, obviously, this is over and above the fact that when we criticize somebody for something right and correct and genuine, this is just talking about our personal inner self and our dealing with our own problems. فَلَا يَخْرُجُ الْكِبْرُ مِنْ قَلْبِكَ إِلَّا بِأَنْ تَعْرِفَ أَنَّ الْكَبِيرَ مَنْ هُوَ كَبِيرٌ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. وذلك موقوف على الخاتمة وهو مشكوك فيه فيشغلك خوف السوء الخاتمة عن أن تتكبر مع الشك فيها على عباد الله تعالى ويقينك وإيمانك في الحال لا يناقض تجويزك التغيير في الاستقبال فإن الله مقلب القلوب يهدي من يشاء ويضل من يشاء. So this is really a lot of food for thought here, a lot of reflection needs to go into this. So arrogance, he's saying that arrogance and this pride will not leave your heart unless, except when you know that the greatest person is he who is considered to be great in the sight of Allah Most High. And that is something that cannot be known until the end of life. And there is no doubt about that. No, there is doubt about that. Meaning the end of life, there's doubt. We don't know how it's going to end. So there's doubt about that. Whether it's going to be good or bad. So let fear of the end occupy you and keep you from making yourself out. Despite the doubt about your end, to be above the servant of God, to be above the servants of Allah Most High. Your certitude and faith at present do not exclude the possibility of your changing in the future. For Allah is the disposer of hearts. He guides whom He wills and leads astray whom He wills. So it's really something to think about. وَالْأَخْبَارُ فِي الْحَسَدِ وَالرِّيَاءِ وَالْكِبْرِ كَثِيرَةٌ. Now he's described the three in somewhat detail, the jealousy and the ostentation and the arrogance and haughtiness. And now he mentions that there are many ahadith about this, because until now he took it more from a personal psychological kind of point of view, how to deal with these issues. But now he wants to mention some of the ahadith. So he says that there's many ahadith on this subject. However, he says that he's only going to mention one which is very comprehensive. So he says, وَيَكْفِيكَ مِنْهَا حَدِيثٌ وَاحِدٌ جَامِعٌ. Just one of those ahadith should suffice to you due to its comprehensiveness. فَقَدْ رَوَى ابْنُ الْمُبَارَكِ بِإِسْنَادِهِ عَنْ رَجُلٍ أَنَّهُ قَالَ لِمُعَاذِ بْنِ جَبَلٍ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى عَنْهُ يَا مُعَاذ. Ibn al-Mubarak, Abdullah ibn al-Mubarak has related with his chain from a person who says that he said to Mu'adh ibn Jabal, that person said to Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiyallahu anhu, who's a companion of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Ya Mu'adh, O Mu'adh, حدثني حديثا سمعته من رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Relate to us a hadith which you've heard from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. قال فبكى معاذ رضي الله عنه حتى ظننت أنه لا يسكت. The person relates that when I asked him this, Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu began to cry and weep until I thought that he's not going to stop. ثم سكت, then he eventually calmed down and stopped. ثم قال سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول, that I've heard the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم say, يا معاذ إني محدثك بحديث إن أنت حفظته نفعك. O Mu'adh, now let us listen to this carefully. O Mu'adh, O Mu'adh, I am going to relate something to you, I'm going to say something to you which if you preserve will benefit you. وَإِنْ أَنْتَ ضَيَّعْتَهُ. However, if you do not preserve it and you let it go to waste, and you do not preserve it, you do not remember it, انقطعت حجتك عند الله عز وجل يوم القيامة. Then you will have nothing for yourself on the day of judgment. You'll have no plea of defense, he says. You'll have no plea of defense. Your plea of defense in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment will become cut away. It'll be removed from you. يا معاذ إن الله خلق سبعة أملاك قبل أن يخلق السماوات والأرض ثم خلق السماوات فجعل لكل سماء من السبع ملكا بوابا عليها فتصعد الحفظة بعمل العبد من حين يصبح إلى حين يمسي له نور كنور الشمس حتى إذا صعدت به إلى سماء الدنيا زكته وكثرته فيقول الملك الموكل بها للحفظة اضربوا بهذا العمل وجه صاحبه فأنا صاحب الغيبة أمرني ربي ألا أدع عمل من اغتاب الناس يجاوزني إلى غيري. Subhanallah, this is talking about those filters. He says, O Mu'adh, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created 7 angels. He created them before He created the heavens and the earth. He created 7 angels before He created the heavens and the earth. Then He created the heavens. And for every heaven, which is every layer of heaven, every one of the 7 layers of heaven, He put one of these angels, He put an angel as a door person, as a guard for each of these, as a keeper for all of these. The guardian angels ascend with a man's work from morning to evening. Whenever we do a good action, it goes up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the guardian angels who take that up. And the work has a light like the light of the sun. It's illuminated, it's bright. When they bring it up to the lowest heaven, they increase and multiply it. Right? So the rewards of it are multiplied. And the angels at the gate say to the guardians, with this work, strike the face of the doer of it. I am in charge of backbiting. My Lord has commanded me not to allow the work of anyone guilty of backbiting to pass beyond me. Ya Allah, I mean that action, as you see, was a pious action, was a good action, but because of the person's backbiting, the rewards of those actions are not accepted, because the angels, they throw it back. Just because of backbiting, that's how severe that is. So he's saying that Amarani Rabbi, he says, I'm not allowed to let it go beyond me, because I'm the one who is not allowed to let the action of anybody who's guilty of ghiba go beyond. قال ثم تأتي الحفظة بعمل صالح من أعمال العبد فتزكيه وتكثره حتى تبلغ به إلى السماء الثانية. Same, likewise, then another guardian angel comes with the pious actions of a servant, and they multiply it, they increase it until it passes to the 7th heaven in this case. فَيَقُولُ لَهُمُ الْمَلَكَ الْمُوَكَّلْ بِالسَّمَاءِ الثَّانِيَةِ. The angel who is responsible, or the keeper of the 2nd heaven, says, قِفُوا وَاضْرِبُوا بِهَذَا الْعَمَلِ وَجْهَ صَاحِبِهِ. Stop, go and strike the face of the person who did this action with this action. أَنَا مَلَكُ الْفَخْرِ. I am the angel of haughtiness, pride and arrogance. إِنَّهُ أَرَادَ بِعَمَلِهِ هَذَا عَرَضَ الدُّنْيَا. This person had intended by this action to gain a possession of the world. أَمَرَنِي رَبِّي أَلَّا أَدَوْ عَمَلَهُ يُجَاوِزُنِي إِلَى غَيْرِي. My Lord has commanded me that I don't leave any action to go beyond me that is of this nature. إِنَّهُ كَانَ يَفْتَخِرُ عَلَى النَّاسِ فِي مَجَالِسِهِمْ. This person used to act arrogantly in a haughty manner over others in their gatherings. قال وتصعد الحفظة بعمل العبد يبتهج نورا من صدقة وصيام وصلاة قد أعجب الحفظة. Then the narrator says that then these guardian angels will take some other servants' actions which will be full of light because of the sadaqah and the charity, the fasting and the prayers that were part of those actions. قد أعجب الحفظة. This will even, this will have even impressed the hafadah, that the guardian angels will be impressed by this. However, again, the same thing happens. فَيُجَاوِزُنِي بِهِ. Now, this particular action goes beyond the 1st and 2nd heaven, and it goes to السماء الثالثة, to the 3rd one. فَيَقُولُ لَهُمُ الْمَلَكَ الْمُوَكَّلْ بِهَا. The angel there says, قِفُوا وَاضْرِبُوا بِهَذَا الْعَمَلِ وَجْهَ صَاحِبِهِ. It doesn't pass by. It says, stop and go and strike the face of this person with that action. أَنَا مَلَكُ الْكِبْرِ. I am the angel of kibr, which is the first one was fakhr, which was more of boasting. Fakhr is more boasting. This 3rd one was more about arrogance. Okay, so the 2nd one was more about boasting, which is just boasting. The arrogance is where you actually consider boasting. The first one is ostentation, boasting, where you just think you've done a great deal or whatever. In the 3rd one, which is kibr, is actually thinking yourself to be better than somebody else as well. So that's this 3rd filter, this angel. أنا ملك الكبر أمرني ربي ألا أدع عمله يجاوزني إلى غيري إنه كان يتكبر على الناس في مجالسهم. That my Lord has commanded me that I can't let any action of this nature pass, because this person used to act arrogantly over and above others in their gatherings. قال وتصعد الحفظة بعمل العبد يزهر كما يزهر الكوكب الدري وله دوي من تسبيح وصلاة وصيام وحج وعمرة حتى يجاوز به إلى السماء الرابعة فيقول له الملك الموكل بها قفوا واضربوا بهذا العمل وجه صاحبه وظهره وبطنه. أنا صاحب العجب أمرني ربي ألا أدع عمله يجاوزني إلى غيري إنه كان إذا عمل عملا أدخل العجب فيه. Ya Allah. Another angel will go with the action of the person. Now this action, it's shining brightly like a star and ringing from the acts of adoration and worship, from fasting and from the greater and lesser pilgrimages. Right, this one is, mashallah, this one is really, you would expect it to have passed. Until it goes to the fourth heaven, the angel that is responsible there says that stop, go back and strike the face of this person, and strike his back and his stomach as well with this action, because I am the angel in charge of conceit. He translates it as pride, but it's actually conceit, where you just think yourself within your own self to be big, right? Whether it leads to a humiliation of somebody else or not. And my Lord has commanded that I do not let any action go beyond me, because whenever this person used to do any action, أدخل العجب فيه, he used to always add into it self-conceit, by thinking of himself to be very worthy and very great and glorious. قال وتصعد الحفظة بعمل العبد حتى يجاوزوا به إلى السماء الخامسة. Now another angel, another guardian angel goes and takes an action. He gets up to the fifth heaven, this one. كأنه العروس المزفوفة إلى أهلها. As though this is a bride that's being conducted to her husband. So it's really adorned. You can just imagine brides are normally adorned when they're being conducted to their husbands. Right? Traditionally, that should be the case. فيقول لهم الملك الموكل بها قفوا واضربوا بهذا العمل. However, the angel stops there. The angel stops it and says, stop. Go and strike the face of that person, and his stomach, his back. وَاحْمِلُوهُ عَلَىٰ عَاتِقِهِ, and go and put it around his neck. أَنَا مَلَكُ الْحَسَدِ, I am the angel of jealousy or envy. إِنَّهُ كَانَ يَحْسُدُ مَنْ يَتَعَلَّمْ وَيَعْمَلْ بِمِثْلِ عَمَلِهِ, because this person used to be envious of the one who used to study and who used to do the action, who used to do similar actions to him. وَكُلُّ مَنْ كَانَ يَأْخُذُ فَضْلًا مِنَ الْعِبَادَاتِ وَكُلُّ مَنْ كَانَ يَأْخُذُ فَضْلًا مِنَ الْعِبَادَاتِ كَانَ يَحْسُدُهُمْ وَيَقَعُ فِيهِمْ أَمَرَنِي رَبِّي أَلَّا أَدَعَ عَمَلَهُ يُجَاوِزُنِي إِلَى غَيْرِي. This man used to envy whoever studied and performed a work like his, and all who was superior to men in some way. He used to envy them and slander them. My Lord has commanded me not to allow his work to pass beyond me. And then he continues and he says, قال وتصعد الحفظة بعمل العبد من صلاة وصيام ونفقة وجهاد وورع له دوي كدوي النحل وضوء كضوء الشمس معه 3000 ملك فيجاوزون به إلى السماء السابعة فيقول لهم الملك الموكل بها قفوا واضربوا بهذا العمل وجه صاحبه واضربوا به جوارحه واقفلوا على قلبه. الله أكبر. إني أحجب عن ربي كل عمل لم يرد به وجه ربي. إنه أراد بعمله غير الله عز وجل. إنه أراد به رفعة عند الفقهاء وذكرا عند العلماء وصيتا في المدائن. أمرني ربي ألا أدع عمله يجاوزني إلى غيري وكل عمل لم يكن خالصا لله تعالى فهو رياء ولا يقبل الله عمل المرائين. This just makes us wonder whether any of our actions are going to be accepted. Because just imagine this one. He says now that this narrator continued, and he said the guardian ascends with a man's work which is so radiant as the moon from worship and almsgiving and the greater and lesser pilgrimages. Actually, this one is the guardian ascends with a man's work consisting of worship and fasting and the spending of money in good causes or otherwise as alms, and the jihad and continence. It had a sound like that of bees and a radiance like that of the sun, like it was just really brimming of, barakah and so on. Along with it were 3,000 angels, and they passed with it to the seventh heaven. The angel responsible for that said to them, stop, and with that work strike the face of the doer of it, and with it strike his limbs and lock up his heart. Allahu Akbar. I veil from my Lord every work that is not done for the sake of my Lord. This work was done for the sake of something other than Allah Most High. He did it for the sake of honor among the religious scholars, and fame among the intellectuals, and renown among the cities. He wanted to get famous among the cities. He wanted a position among the scholars. Allahu Akbar. My Lord commanded me not to allow his work to pass beyond me. Every work not done purely for Allah is hypocrisy, and Allah does not receive the work of the hypocrite. قال وتصعد الحفظ بعمل العبد من صلاة وزكاة وصيام وحج وعمرة وخلق حسن وصمت وذكر الله وتشيعه ملائكة السماوات حتى يقطع الحجب كلها إلى الله عز وجل فيقفون بين يديه ويشهدون له بالعمل الصالح المخلص لله تعالى فيقول الله عز وجل أنتم الحفظ على عمل عبدي وأنا الرقيب على ما في قلبه إنه لم يردني عمل وأراد به غيري فعليه لعنتي فتقول الملائكة كلها عليه لعنتك ولعنتنا وتلعنه السماوات السبع ومن فيهن. قال معاذ قلت يا رسول الله أنت رسول الله وأنا معاذ فكيف لي بالخلاص والنجاة. Now this is when he goes beyond the seventh heaven, he says, the narrator says, the guardians ascend with a man's work consisting of worship, almsgiving, fasting, the greater and lesser pilgrimages, a good character, observances of silence and recollection of Allah, remembrance of Allah Most High. It is accompanied by the angels of the seven heavens. This one is, mashallah, many of the angels of the seven heavens accompany this one until they have passed through all the veils to the presence of Allah Most High. None of the angels stop them. Then they stand before Him and bear witness to Him of the good work performed solely for the sake of Allah Most High. And Allah Most High says that you are the guardian over the work of my servant, but I am the watcher over his heart. This act was not done for my sake, but for the sake of something else. So my curse be upon him. Then the angels will say, thy curse and our curse be upon him. And the seven heavens and those in them will begin to curse that person. At that, Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu wept. And then Mu'adh continued. He said, I said, O Messenger of Allah, you are the Messenger of Allah and I am Mu'adh. How shall I have purity of intention and salvation? How can I escape from these problems? How can I allow my work to get to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and not be stopped before them? Or how will I make it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not curse me? So inshallah, we'll have to look at that tomorrow. But it's really, really something to think about, where we think that, we give these few actions and they are accepted. Inshallah, we need to think over this and reflect over this, and hopefully in the responses that the Prophet ﷺ gives, that will give us the inspiration which is supposed to be brought about by this hadith, inshallah. Okay, we'll just take the few questions that we have here. How about if a person feels able to take a position of leadership, or perhaps feels qualified, should they volunteer? Is also ayness. You see, that's regarding what we said the other day as well. When a person talks about themselves, a lot of the time when people talk about themselves, it will lead to arrogance. But there are certain cases where a person is able to do this for a particular good reason, where it's necessary for them to do because of some ulterior good, and they are personally able to keep themselves in check and be completely sincere. So that's the same case with this as well. That is, it's never good to ask for a position, but sometimes if you just think that things are being just run in a very bad way, and it's just completely incorrect the way things are being run, and you think that you can do it, then as long as, again, you have to deal with the sincerity, because there's two things. One is to take up the position and benefit the people, but the other thing is, sometimes we could be benefiting the people because of our talks and lectures, but because of our intention being corrupt, we are personally not benefiting at all. We're personally not getting any reward at all. And that's what we need to act upon. So it's never good to to say that I want this position or whatever, but in some cases it will be permissible when there's a major good that can come out of it, and as long as we're sincere. I mean, the example there is of Yusuf alayhi salam. He actually asked for the position of being the kind of agricultural minister, or the one that was responsible for the distribution of the rations, because he knew that if there was anybody else in that position, the people would have suffered, because they would have been unjust in the way they distributed the rations at the time of the drought. So he took up that position in order to benefit the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and benefit the people. So again, one has to really look at oneself and maybe consult with somebody about such a thing, if such a decision needs to be made. Plus, when you look at it, the hadith says that Abdurrahman ibn Auf radiyallahu anhu was told by the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam that la tas'alul imara, don't ask for leadership, because if you ask for it and then you get it, then basically because you have sought it yourself, then you'll be left to deal with it to your own ability and your own power and your own capability. However, if you are put, and if you're given, if you're appointed in that position without you asking for it, then you'll be assisted with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala along with all of the your own capabilities, and that's very necessary when you're dealing with people. So all of those things need to be taken into consideration when one person feels like they should take up a position. Again, participating in a democratic election is the same as any other position, in the sense that, why are we seeking that? If we're seeking this to make it better for Muslims or better for certain people in the community, for the general benefit of the community, and we're sincere about doing this, we're not doing this just for name and fame. And the problem is that when you're dealing with these kind of things and you're having interviews and the limelight is on you, the feeling of wanting name and fame may enter into the heart. So that's when you have to start being careful. I mean, obviously, if a person feels that they can benefit the area or benefit the people and do things in a more just way, and not fall down the same hole that many other politicians fall down into, then obviously there's a chance that there can be some benefit in this. So I'm just saying that all of these things need to be treaded with caution, and looked on with caution, because of the potential harm that one can do to oneself, and obviously to others in some cases. Obviously some things are just a bit more different than other things. So hopefully that helps. And inshallah we'll carry on tomorrow with the rest of the hadith, and hopefully will give us great inspiration, inshallah. But it definitely helps to understand this in this way, when we feel sometimes so overly confident about who we are and what we do, and so on and so forth. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidil mursaleen wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een, amma ba'd. We were in the midst of the very long hadith from Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiyallahu anhu, in which he speaks about how the actions are taken up through the 7 heavens, and they have to pass by the angels who are considered the gatekeepers of each heaven, and they stop the action depending on what they find in there. And you saw how sometimes the action was such a well done action, such an excellent action, that it passed by so many of the heavens, but it was only stopped on the 6th or the 7th, and so on and so forth. And actually, as we concluded yesterday, that Allah knows best how many of our actions are then accepted. But then Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu, at the end of that, he says, قال معاذ قلت يا رسول الله أنت رسول الله وأنا معاذ فكيف لي بالخلاص والنجاة. Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu says that I said to the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Ya Rasul Allah, O Messenger of Allah, you are the Messenger of Allah, and I am only Mu'adh. That's basically what he's saying, that you're the Messenger of Allah, I'm Mu'adh. What do I do about this? كيف لي بالخلاص والنجاة. How is it that I can be delivered from this problem? How can I gain salvation? قال اقتدي بي وإن كان في عملك نقص يا معاذ فاحفظ لسانك من الوقيعة في إخوانك من حملة القرآن واحمل ذنوبك عليك ولا تحملها عليهم ولا تزكي نفسك بذمهم. So the Prophet ﷺ begins to give him some nasiha and some advice, and he tells him the way to get out of this problem. He says, O Mu'adh, he says, follow my example, even if you fall short somewhat in what you do, O Mu'adh. Like, even if you have shortcomings in your actions and so on, try to follow my example. The barakah of the sunnah, even though you may fall short, will insha'Allah complete the problem, which will fill the hole the problem has created. Ya Mu'adh, he said, O Mu'adh. And then he starts giving him the various things that he said. He says, فَاحْفَظْ لِسَانَكَ مِنْ وَقِيعَةِ فِي إِخْوَانِكَ مِنْ حَمَلَةِ الْقُرْآنِ وَاحْمِلْ ذُنُوبَكَ عَلَيْكَ وَلَا تَحْمِلْهَا عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا تُزَكِّ نَفْسَكَ بِذَمِّهِمْ وَلَا تَرْفَعْ نَفْسَكَ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا تُدْخِلْ عَمَلَ الدُّنْيَا فِي عَمَلِ الْآخِرَةِ. Guard your tongue from slandering your brothers who know the Qur'an by heart. Those who carry the Qur'an in their heart, stop slandering them. Attribute your sins to yourself and not to them. Do not justify yourself and blame them. Do not exalt yourself above them. Do not mingle the work of this world with the work of the world to come. ولا تتكبر في مجلسك لكي يحذر الناس من سوء خلقك. ولا تناجي رجلا وعندك آخر. These are small advices which really if a person acts upon, they make up the beautiful larger picture. Otherwise they create a larger blameworthy picture. And then he says, do not exalt yourself above them. Do not mingle the work of this world with the work of the world to come. Do not act arrogantly in society so that men avoid you because of your bad character. Problem with people acting arrogantly is that people begin to avoid them because they just don't want to deal with that situation, especially nowadays when there's so much individualism and people think that they can just make their own life, and when people think that they can take care of their own selves, they don't really have to look up to anybody anymore nowadays. So it's even more true in that sense in certain circles. Then he says something really basic. He says, do not whisper to one man while another is also present. This comes from the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said that when you've got 3 people, then 2 of them should not whisper to each other, and leaving out the third, because the third one is going to become grieved about this, unless of course he doesn't mind and he knows that there's something that you have to speak about which he's not to be told about, or something of that nature where it's understood. But in most cases, if somebody starts whispering to somebody else while a third person is there, it's going to grieve him. Unless of course there's more people and the person can be speaking to somebody else. But if he's part of your immediate majlis, meaning if he's part of your immediate group, then try to excuse yourself in a way that that person does not feel bad, right? It really makes a person feel bad. This also applies to, for example, let's say 2 people speak Urdu and one person does not speak Urdu, and the 2 people just suddenly start speaking Urdu the other person cannot understand. It's basically like whispering because the other person doesn't know what's going on, right? For any language for that matter, 2 people speaking Arabic, one person left out, 2 people speaking Farsi, the other person left out, Punjabi or whatever it is. This would also work according to the hadith on 4 people, if 3 people are speaking together, leaving one out. What it says though, that is if there's others that he can mingle with and talk to, and there are other people around there that you're already doing that with, then it may be fine. But again, just observe the situation, be careful, because it's a really basic thing that some people really overlook, but you don't know how much it grieves somebody else. But all of this is important to save ourselves from our actions being forsaken and thrown back on our faces, as the hadith is mentioning. Then he says, do not magnify your importance above other men so that you lose the good things of both this world and the world to come. Do not tear to pieces people's character so that on the day of resurrection the dogs of hell tear you to pieces in hell. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. وَلَا تُمَزِّقِ النَّاسَ بِلِسَانِكَ. That's exactly what we just read now. قال الله تعالى وَالنَّاشِطَاتِ نَشْطًا هل تدري ما هن يا معاذ. Now you can see the Prophet ﷺ is really explaining this to Mu'adh. Then he mentions a verse of the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, by those who draw forth. ناشطات نشطا والناشطات نشطا, by those who draw forth. Do you know what these are? Do you know who these are, Mu'adh? O Mu'adh. قال قلت بأبي أنت وأمي يا رسول الله ما هن. Mu'adh radiallahu anhu says that I said, my father and mother be sacrificed. May you be ransomed by my father and mother. That's another translation of this. O Messenger of Allah, who are these? قال كلاب في النار تنشط اللحم من العظم. He said the dogs in hell drawing the flesh from the bones. These will be dogs of hell that will draw the flesh from the bones. قلت بأبي أنت وأمي يا رسول الله فمن يطيق هذه الخصال ومن ينجو منها. I said, O Messenger of Allah, may you be ransomed by my father and my mother. Who is able to acquire these good qualities, and who will escape from these dogs? قال يا معاذ. You see, this is the part. He says, إنه ليسير لمن يسره الله عليه. إنه ليسير لمن يسره الله عليه. This is the main part here. He said, O Mu'adh, it is indeed easy for him for whom God makes it easy. That's the word we've been looking for. قال الراوي فما رأيت أحدا أكثر تلاوة للقرآن من معاذ لهذا الحديث. The narrator who narrates from Mu'adh, he says that I have not seen anybody who more abundantly recites the Quran than Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu because of this hadith. فتأمل أيها الراغب في طلب العلم هذه الخصال. So Imam Ghazali says, reflect on this. O person, O one who wants to seek the knowledge, think of these things. There's actually another more famous hadith that is part of the Arba'een of Nawawi as well, which is from Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu, in which he asks questions to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it looked like Mu'adh radiyallahu anhu normally asked these questions, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam would answer him. Even in that one, at the end it says that إِنَّهُ لَيَسِيرٌ عَلَى مَنْ يَسَّرَهُ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ, that it is easy on those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easy for. Right? So the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had told him and given him all of those counsels that اقتدي بي وإن كان في عملك نقص يا معاذ. So that's the thing that we need to observe here, that it's those things that are important, that we avoid the smaller problems, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help us with the larger issues. Right? Sometimes we really not concerned about the smaller issues, like the one we mentioned, and like the one we mentioned about speaking to somebody else privately, or whispering to somebody else while the other person is there. So that's why it's important to observe as many things as possible, because we never know what or which action of ours, however small it is going to, benefit us. Then he says, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ أَعْظَمَ الْأَسْبَابِ فِي رُسُوخِ هَذِهِ الْخَبَائِثِ فِي الْقَلْبِ طَلَبُ الْعِلْمِ لِأَجْلِ الْمُبَاهَاةِ وَالْمُنَافَسَةِ والعامي بمعزل عن أكثر هذه الخصال والمتفقه مستهدف لها وهو معرض للهلاك بسببها. And actually this hadith here, Allahu Akbar, Imam Ghazali talks about these problems, these three problems, which is the hasad, which is the jealousy, and all of these the three issues that he talked about, the jealousy, the ostentation, and the haughtiness. And he said that, he actually says here that these apply more to people who are studying the deen and the knowledge. So this is talking to all of us here, because we're all gathered here today to study this deen and study the religion and get a better understanding of it. So he says that, so you who desire knowledge, reflect on these bad qualities and know undoubtedly that the greatest cause of these vices becomes established in the heart. Know that the greatest cause of these vices becoming established in the heart is the pursuit of knowledge in order to dispute with others and outshine them. That if we're studying so that we can be better than somebody else, we can get one above the other person, or that we can, we'll be in a better position to argue with somebody. Right? Argue with somebody here means, just pure argument, just to win an argument. We're not talking about an argument where it's more of a debate of trying to prove the truth, for a good reason with complete sincerity. What we're talking about here is an argument purely for the sake of an argument, just to win an argument. And as I mentioned before, there used to be a tradition in the courts of the rulers of the past sometimes, where they would call in two scholars and have them debate on something, and to see who was better. And that developed an atmosphere, that created an atmosphere of just winning debates and so on and so forth. And that was the problem. So that's maybe what he's referring to. Because nowadays that doesn't happen as much, but there's still some people who go and study a few points here and there, and then they want to argue with scholars and that, and just to be able to ask the difficult question when a scholar is going to speak, and then there's question time and things like that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from these kind of problems. And then he mentions that the ordinary man is far removed from these bad qualities, but the scholar or theologian is in way of them, and meaning the scholar or theologian is a perfect target for these problems and is exposed to destruction because of them. So we have to be extra careful. فانظر هل أهم أمورك أن تتعلم كيفية الحذر من هذه المهلكات وتشتغل بإصلاح قلبك وعمارة آخرتك أم الأهم أن تخوض مع الخائضين وتطلب من العلم ما هو سبب زيارة الكبر والرياء والحسد والعجب حتى تهلك مع الهالكين. He says, consider then, which of your affairs is more important? What's more important for you? Is it to learn how to guard against these destructive things and to occupy yourself with the improvement of your heart and the preparation of your eternal life? Is that more important? Or whether it's more important to engage along with the others in the pursuit of such knowledge as will increase your arrogance, meaning to just indulge with others into the knowledge that will just increase your arrogance, hypocrisy, envy and pride, until along with the others you perish also. واعلم أن هذه الخصال الثلاثة من أمهات خبائث القلب ولها مغرس واحد وهو حب الدنيا ولذلك قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم حب الدنيا رأس كل خطيئة. Now you have to remember the other thing here. Is that Imam Ghazali is addressing this book to a student. So that's why you see that he's really coming down on people of knowledge. Now, this doesn't mean that they're at disadvantage. This doesn't mean that they're at disadvantage. He's just trying to tell them to be extra careful. Obviously, when he's talking to non-scholars as well, if he begins to speak to non-scholars, then he talks about ignorance, and he talks about how having no knowledge, you can see the kind of hadith and so on that he'll bring there, it'll have a similar impact. So don't think that this is just restricted to this. This is like a marriage counselor or a scholar who's talking to a couple, let's say a husband and wife who are having problems, and he's got the husband alone and he's really telling him off. Right, and the husband thinks that, he's making it sound like it's all my fault and I have to do everything. But when he speaks to the wife separately as well, he'll tell her off in the same way, and he'll tell her about how she should fulfill his rights and so on, right? But he's not going to tell her that he needs to fulfill your rights, and likewise he's not going to tell him that she needs to fulfill your rights, because that's just going to aggravate the situation. He tells each person what's most important for them, and everybody thinks that, it's all coming on me, and the other person doesn't have a problem. But this is just to encourage and to push the person to fulfill the other person's rights, right? And to recognize their own responsibilities. So this is similar in this case as well, that he's talking to a person of knowledge and he's telling him the finer points of that. He's not going to relate a lot of these things if he's talking to non-scholars. So that's why, understand what he's talking about here. It should not put you, what I'm trying to say is that this should not put us off studying the deen because we feel that, there's just too much responsibility. There's actually much more responsibility with ignorance, because then we're likely to fall under much more deception, because one faqih, despite all of these things, one faqih is supposed to be stronger, is supposed to be more of a burden on shaitan to overcome than a thousand just raw worshippers that don't have fiqh and understanding. So just imagine that if it's this difficult for ulama, then imagine if you have no knowledge whatsoever, how much it should be 1,000 times more difficult. So although there's certain aspects which the ulama have to, and the scholars and people of knowledge and people who seek knowledge, because anybody who has a bit of knowledge, over and above the average, is considered to have some more knowledge than the average. So we are all responsible for the amount of knowledge, because even scholars, when you take 5 scholars for example, each one of them will have a different amount of knowledge. So likewise, those who are not considered to be graduates of an institution or something, but they've still studied to a certain degree, they have a responsibility. Everybody has a responsibility for the knowledge and for the ignorance that they possess. He says that you should know that these 3 qualities are the roots of the vices of the heart, and they have a single field of operation, namely the love of this world. The love of this world is the main problem, is the main cause and the root of these problems. For that reason, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the love of this world is the fount of all sin. That's what creates everything. Because when a person is focused on the hereafter, then they don't worry as much. ومع هذا فالدنيا مزرعة الآخرة فمن أخذ من الدنيا بقدر الضرورة لتستعين به على الآخرة فالدنيا مزرعته ومن أراد الدنيا ليتنعم بها فالدنيا مهلكته. Then he clarifies the issue that although this world is, love of this world is the fount of all sins, but he talks about the positive aspects of this world as well. So he says, at the same time, this world is a field sown for reaping in the world to come. If there was no world for us, meaning if we did not come into this world, then we would not be in the hereafter, because we'd have nothing to show. This world is here. If we come here, this is used for us as a plantation for the hereafter. If a man takes from this world only as much as is necessary to help him with regard to the world to come, then this world is for him a field that has been sown. But if he wants this world to enjoy it, then this world is his ruination. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Then he says, فَهَذِهِ نُبْذَةٌ يَسِيرَةٌ مِنْ ظَاهِرِ عِلْمِ التَّقْوَى وَهِيَ بِدَايَةُ الْهِدَايَةِ. Subhanallah, we're coming to the end of this book, it seems. Because he's talked about all of the principles of the beginning of guidance, all of the foundations of the beginning of guidance. So he talked about the external traits first, and how to spend a day and how to outwardly show something. Then he explained how the outward actions are actually governed by the inside, by the inner actions. So then he turned to the inner actions. And since this was supposed to be a short nasiha, a short counsel and advice, he only mentioned the core foundation and the core problems that create an evil in the heart, and he showed how to deal with that. So then he says, فَهَذِهِ نُبْذَةٌ يَسِيرَةٌ مِنْ ظَاهِرِ عِلْمِ التَّقْوَى وَهِيَ بِدَايَةُ الْهِدَايَةِ فَإِنْ جَرَّبْتَ فِيهَا نَفْسَكَ فَطَاوَعَتْكَ عَلَيْهَا فَعَلَيْكَ بِكِتَابِ إِحْيَاءِ عُلُومِ الدِّينِ لِتَعْرِفَ كَيْفِيَّةَ الْوُصُولِ إِلَى بَاطِنِ التَّقْوَى. The above is a small part of the science of taqwa, which is the state of being conscious about your Lord, in its exterior aspect, and it is the beginning of guidance. This is the beginning of guidance. If you try it out on yourself in practice and find yourself accepting it, then you must turn to the revival of religious sciences to become acquainted with taqwa in its interior aspect. So anybody who's been part of this class from the beginning and has stayed right through, your staying through is proof that you've benefited, or as Imam Ghazali says, that you found yourself accepting this. Then you should study the Ihya Ulumuddin. This is talking to all of us who've been able to go through this and who didn't fall away. And then he says, فَإِذَا عَمَرْتَ بِالتَّقْوَى بَاطِنَ قَلْبِكَ فَعِنْدَ ذَلِكَ تَرْتَفِعُ الْحُجُبُ بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَ رَبِّكَ وتنكشف لك أنوار المعارف وتتفجر من قلبك ينابيع الحكمة وتتضح لك أسرار الملك والملكوت ويتيسر لك من العلوم ما تستحقر به هذه العلوم المحدثة التي لم يكن لها ذكر في زمن الصحابة والتابعين رضي الله عنهم أجمعين. Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Just one thing I want to comment on before we carry on, where the Prophet ﷺ said at the end of that hadith that it is easy for those whom Allah makes it easy upon. The note to add there would be that ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it easy, and He will make it easy for us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَاللَّيْلِ إِذَا يَغْشَى, He says, فَأَمَّا مَنْ أَعْطَى وَاتَّقَى وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى. As for those who give, and who have taqwa, who fear Allah, وَصَدَّقَ بِالْحُسْنَى, and they confirm the truth, they confirm the good things, فَسَنُيَسِّرُهُ لِلْيُسْرَى, we will facilitate the easy path for them. So the point is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for tawfiq and to make it easy for us, to cry out to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and to explain ourselves, and to say that you can make it easy for us because everything around us is in your hands and it's in your control. So you can make my boss at work change. You can make the system at my school change. I want you to make it easy for me, that even though I have to be in this place, for example, and this is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought me or whatever it is, you have to make it easy for me, that I'm able to practice your faith and be a good servant of yours. So that's what's important. Right? Then anyway, at this time he says, if you try it out on yourself, no, when you have built up the interior of your heart in taqwa, at that the veil between you and your Lord will be removed. The light of knowledge will be revealed to you. They will burst forth from your heart the springs of wisdom, and the secrets of the supernal realm will be made clear to you. You see, when a person has acted with taqwa and has given himself up or herself up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then the heart, the darkness of the heart is removed, the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enters the heart, and then the springs of wisdom burst forth. That's why when you hear these great wisdoms and aphorisms mentioned from these great scholars, it shows the purity of their heart, because their heart was so clean, they were able to see things as they were, unclouded by any form of bias, unclouded by any form of corruption, right? Unclouded by any kind of darkness. They were able to see beyond the facade of things and say the true and the reality of things. And they make those statements which hit us so clearly, but we can't make those statements ourselves, because although we can appreciate them because we understand it, but we cannot maybe issue those statements because those statements come from people whose hearts are very clean. The best of those, the most superior of those, was no doubt the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you see the jawami'ul kalim and the comprehensive statements from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you'll see how it ranks just above everybody else's. And the reason is that his heart was the most purest, in the sense that not only was it pure in terms of how much he could make it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had made it even purer by the splitting of the chest and taking out his heart, and cleansing it 3 times, or let's say purifying it 3 times. One was when he was at the Halima Sa'diya's place being nursed by her. Just after that time, once his two other children of Halima Sa'diya saw him being lain down by 2 men in white garments, who split open his chest and washed his heart. The second time was before he went and before he got the first revelation, and the third time was before he ascended up to the heavens for the Mi'raj journey. And this was to prepare his heart. So you can imagine how clean and how connected his heart was to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Of course, that's impossible to reach, but we can reach at least close enough that we can also have a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's why he says, وَتَتَّضِحُ لَكَ أَسْرَارُ الْمُلْكِ وَالْمَلَكُوتِ وَيَتَيَسَّرُ لَكَ مِنَ الْعُلُومِ مَا تَسْتَحْقِرُ بِهِ هَذِهِ الْعُلُومَ الْمُحْدَثَةَ الَّتِي لَمْ يَكُنْ لَهَا ذِكْرٌ فِي زَمَنِ الصَّحَابَةِ وَالتَّابِعِينَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُمْ أَجْمَعِينَ. I don't know, this statement is just so perfect for this time, because this is what he says. He says, such sciences will become familiar to you that you will hold of no account, you'll hold no value to these new-fangled sciences of which there was no whisper in the days of the companions, radiyallahu anhum, and the followers. See, today the reason why people don't want to study the deen is because they're just so overwhelmed by the sciences of today, and think that that's the only way to live in this world, is to get these great degrees and so on. No doubt they help, but the way that people are just so overly impressed by these things. Coming from England, where people were not in the beginning, now it's changing there as well, but in the beginning people were not so overwhelmed by these things, and their main focus was the madrasas and so on. Can you imagine it, that there's about, more than maybe around 10 million or so Muslims in America, but there's only one full-time madrasa that teaches until Sahih al-Bukhari and can really produce good scholars, right? Even that madrasa does not even compare to the majority of those in England, but there's only one in America, in Buffalo, right? Which, among these 10 million people in this large place of prosperity, where you're able to bring up large corporations, you're able to put up large masjids and Islamic centers, that we're not able to have one madrasa that matches the madrasas in England, for example. England only has max 3 million Muslims taqriban, right? But it has over 10 madrasas. It has more than 3 madrasas, or 4 for women as well, that teach all the way from the beginning of basic Arabic all the way until the 6 books of hadith. And you can just imagine the barakah in the communities because of that. No doubt when the hadith is being read somewhere, there's going to be a barakah there, right? So the reason is that there, even though there's 10 madrasas, my understanding, and from when I went there last time, there are big, even though there's more than 10 madrasas and many more localized ones where they teach you the first few years and then transfer you over to a larger madrasa, where you're talking about serious study of knowledge and not just the basic Sunday school ideology. there are so many madrasas. Despite that, there's a big waiting list on nearly all of them. There's a big waiting list on nearly all of them, right? In America, it's difficult to maintain a madrasa. So many people have tried, but they just don't see enough people taking interest, because everybody's concerned about making their children. And this is a typical Indian Pakistani things, and I can speak about them, without fear of being considered prejudiced, right? Everybody wants to make their children these lawyers and these doctors, and they won't take anything less. No doubt we need our lawyers and we need our doctors, but it's not even an intention that, I'll put one of my children, my one son or my one daughter, at least they should study the deen, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of them. You look at the scholars of the past. Where did you see them suffering in poverty? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala takes care of people. وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَلْ لَهُ مَخْرَجًا وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبُ. So that's why I urge all of you to have an intention that at least with your children, inshallah, if you have them, or when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives them to you, that your intention should be that at least one of them should cater to this community, cater to this nation, by producing scholars of Islam that will come and that will bring about the change that is so required, that is so much required, such a great requirement in this country. I really put a lot of blame on the first generation who did not focus on this. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive them, Allah forgive us, and Allah do not allow us to make the same mistakes, because no doubt people made mistakes. People came in this country and they did not focus on the hereafter as much. They focused more on just making themselves in this. And I'm not saying that you can't focus on your survival, you have to, but I think you went beyond the survival to a life of luxury, where you wanted the house in the suburb, where you wanted those few cars, the van, and the SUV, and and everything else. Right? In England, people struggled. England is less of a capitalistic country. It's less. It's not as easy as here to make a lot of money. But still, people struggle. They make sure they made their madrasas, they made their maktabs. England is running so many madrasas around the world. If you go in Ramadan to England, for example, every masjid, you're going to have at least 2 to 3 people a day after different salats asking for donations for madrasas in India, Pakistan, in Bangladesh, and in other cities, right, in other countries around the world. They all come to England, so much so that you have to actually book if a person wants to go and collect money from a particular masjid, most likely you're going to have to book a month in advance for the Asr prayer on the 4th of Ramadan, for example, because after Asr there's a collection, after Maghrib there's a collection, after Isha there's a collection. Now I know obviously because there's so many people aren't able to give as much, but they'll throw a pound, they'll throw whatever it is into that pile, and it will help to build those madrasas around the world. There's so much going on, despite the fact that people are not as wealthy necessarily in England, and they're just kind of more down to earth. There's less professional people there among the Muslims, but still that's really what happens. So Imam Ghazali really hits it on the head here, where he understands this. He says such sciences will become more familiar to you and will become more closer to you, and you will hold of no account then and no value these newfangled sciences of which there was no whisper in the days of the companions and the followers. So I would also urge that anybody who's still studying, take on a subject, even in college, even at university, take on something that is going to be beneficial for people in general, and it's not just a money-making thing for you, right? Take something that is more useful. For example, a friend of mine, he became a medical doctor, but then he decided that just with a regular medical, being a regular medical doctor is not going to be as helpful as if I went. And he thought about it, and he said, a lot of Muslims are kind of deal with tropical issues, so he went and he took tropical medicine. So he became specialized in tropical medicine, so that if the need arose, he would be able to go and help out in a Muslim country. So things like that, you should really be focused on them, so we don't waste our life and we don't regret before we die that we should have done much better. So anyway, I think وإن كنت تطلب المعرفة من القيل والقال والمراء والجدال فما أعظم مصيبتك وما أطول تعبك وما أعظم حرمانك وخسرانك فاعمل ما شئت فإن الدنيا التي تطلبها بالدين لا تسلم لك والآخرة تسلب منك
فَمَنْ طَلَبَ الدُّنْيَا بِالدِّينِ خَسِرَهُمَا جَمِيعًا وَمَنْ تَرَكَ الدُّنْيَا لِلدِّينِ رَبِحَهُمَا جَمِيعًا. He says, if however you pursue the science of argument and counter-argument, of contradiction and dispute, how great will be your misfortune, how productive your toil, how great your disappointment and your loss. Do what you will, because the world, to the pursuit of which you make your religion a means, will nevertheless not be vouchsafed to you, and the world to come will be kept from you. He's saying that even if you try your best, sometimes there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that you're going to get the world. But the problem is that you're definitely going to lose the hereafter. So what's the point? Then he says, the man who makes his religion a means to the gaining of this world will lose both worlds alike, whereas the man who gives up this world for the sake of religion will gain both worlds alike. And again, he's talking to people who are on the course of study. He's talking to us. فهذه جمل الهداية إلى بداية الطريق في معاملتك مع الله عز وجل بأداء أوامره واجتناب نواهيه. ونشير الآن عليك بجمل من الآداب لتؤاخذ بها نفسك من مخالطتك مع عباد الله عز وجل وصحبتك لهم في الدنيا. He says, this is all the guidance to the beginning of the way in respect of your dealings with Allah Most High by performing what He commands and avoiding what He forbids. If you remember at the beginning of this second section, he mentioned that there's two responsibilities you have. One is you have a responsibility to Allah. The other is your responsibility to others. So he said, I'm completing the portion that talks about your responsibility to Allah. But in the next section I'm going to talk about, he says, now I shall give you a counsel by short treatment of good manners, to that you may charge your carnal soul with them in your association with the servants of Allah, exalted is He, and your companionship with them in this world. So that's the next section, which is Al-Qism Al-Thalith, Al-Qawlu fi Adab Al-Suhbati Wal-Mu'asharati Ma'al Khaliqi Wal-Khalqi. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the true understanding of what was said today and allow us to implement this. Now I'm just going to quickly go through these questions that we have. There are a couple of more sentences in my version after "for whoever Allah makes it easy for." It says, it would suffice you that your love for the people, that you love for the people, that you love for yourself, and you dislike for them or you dislike for yourself. And then, O Mu'adh, you have been saved. And that's strange, because that's not in my nuskha either, and this one is really, it's not part of this one as well, so I'm not sure what that was from. But anyway, it's here for us to benefit from. And O Mu'adh, you have been then saved, which is to love for others that you love for yourself. How about if we have not practiced on everything, or find it difficult to be steadfast on these points made in this book? Should we still continue with the Ihya? You try your best with this book. But there's no contradiction between doing that and reading the Ihya Ulumuddin, because it's difficult for us to act upon every single thing that we hear, and that, because just sometimes our situation is like that. But the benefit of reading more is the fact that there's going to be things in there that will inspire us. And definitely Ihya Ulumuddin, mashallah, the way he talks about any particular subject, the way he brings the Quranic verses and so on, and the depth that he goes in, and the subtleties that he brings up, it really answers a lot of questions for us. So that's the way it is. It's going to be beneficial, inshallah, if you do have the time to read that. I would like to request as well, I would like to remind myself by asking you, Sheikh, to describe how to attain the taqwa and maintain it. I think basically to attain taqwa, it's basically by following this book. That's what he talked about here, which is to talk about the foundation, to get our intentions correct, and then to try to focus as much as possible on obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as possible. If we do those 4 things in the morning, which is to do one portion of time to think about, to read the Quran, 1/4 of the time to read du'as, in which we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all of the things that we want, and then one portion of the time for dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which will, dhikr of Allah cleanses the heart and brings in the nur of Allah. That makes it easier for us to fear Allah, and hence the taqwa is created. And the 4th portion is the muhasabah, which is to think about this, to muraqabah, to think about this life, and to think about our sins, and to think about our hereafter, and so on and so forth. That's probably one of the best ways to gain that. Is there anything wrong with a child going through the madrasa system, then gaining a secular degree at a Western university, example, medicine, law, etc.? It just depends on why they're doing that. A lot of people, what happens is their parents have, put them into the alim class, or they've become a scholar, and then after that they feel inferior, so they go into medicine and law. That's wrong, right? But if there's a particular benefit of going into medicine and law, then there's no problem with that. For example, I was considering to go and do a law degree for a particular reason, because I like law in the first place, and I feel that, we can, try to help people in this country. That I get a lot of calls from lawyers that want to deal with issues. So it just depends on your intention. But what's happening now, unfortunately, is that people think that they can't survive. People think they can't survive without a degree, and that's absolutely wrong. I'm telling you. I'm telling you, it's absolutely wrong that you can survive. If Allah wants, He can make you survive. If you give yourself for the deen, Allah will give it to you. Allah will give it to you. I remember there was a brother really wanted to study the deen, but his father's like, no, you can't, because you have to finish your degree, this, that, and the other, right? And this brother, he really wants to go study. He was such a nice brother. He really wanted to go to study. And he asked me, he goes, can you speak to my father? My father wants to speak to you. But then he warned me about one thing. He said that make sure that you don't tell him about tawakkul. Don't talk about tawakkul to him. Don't say that, don't worry about it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will take care of you. Right? Will take care of your son, because that's just not going to fly with him. You need to give him some solid examples. Right? So people just don't have any tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala nowadays. They feel like in this world, to get, to make a decent amount of money, but that's money. And I'm telling you, I can give you examples of people who don't have, PhDs or some major degrees or qualifications of that nature, but have given themselves up for the deen. And I'm telling you, they've basically been blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of this world, for sure anyway, that they've been given whatever they want. If somebody really wants, ask me, I'll give you a personal example. If you're really troubled by this, I'll give you a personal example. And regarding students of deen, if everyone were to leave the worldly sciences, then how would Fardul Kifaya be fulfilled? If everyone were to leave, I mentioned that very clearly. We do need them. Always people get me wrong when I speak about this, right? And I don't think you've got me wrong. You're probably just asking the question here. But the point I'm trying to make here is that whenever you talk about this, whenever you're trying to encourage among people who don't send any of their children, you're trying to tell them, look, please send at least one to study, get one to study. They say, but, if everybody studies. I'm not talking about everybody studying. Everybody cannot study. Even in the time when, mashallah, it was a Muslim Khilafah system and the ulama were all over the place. Not everybody studied. It's not going to happen, right? Unless the government forces everybody to go into a madrasa. It's not going to happen. What we're talking about is parents to change their mind that I can sacrifice my son. You see, if the son says, I need to go to a madrasa, they're going to say, no, you can't leave home. But if they get an opportunity to go to Harvard or Yale or somewhere like that, they're going to say, Bismillah, definitely you'll go. And they'll be willing to sacrifice anything for that. They'll be willing to take massive loans and so on. Right? So the idea, what I'm talking about here is, I'm talking about a situation where nobody wants to study, right? And, really, it's not about sending everybody. It's just sending the few at least to at least cater for the needs of the Muslim community in this area. Anyway, let's carry on. And just one more point on this, doctor, teachers, etc. You have to remember, if we've got a medical problem and there's no Muslim doctors available, there's no Dr. Khan or Dr. Hussein, we're still going to be able to go to a non-Muslim doctor and get them to treat us, right? Not every non-Muslim doctor is a bad person. You have to remember that. But what happens if we don't have any scholars? Who are we going to go to? Are we going to go to whatever the Jewish or Christian person is in the Islamic department chair at the university? Is that who we're going to go to? Right? You have to remember it's important to understand that.
regarding the seeking of knowledge during rihla by going overseas to Yemen or to Syria, would this be recommended over staying in, say, one's own country and learning from the scholars there? Any advice would be much appreciated. It really depends. I can't give a specific answer to you on such a general question, because wherever a person is, what's available locally, I don't know. Because sometimes for a person, what's available locally is going to be much better than, for example, what he may learn in another country, right? But sometimes what's available locally is not going to be as good. So it just really depends on the situation, right? How can we as children and the Muslim youth in the West today explain to our parents and help them to understand the importance of madrasa and learning deen? How do we make them understand and come to terms with this and let us go to madrasa or further our knowledge for the deen in our ways? That's a good question, and that's what my fight is all about. That's what my struggle is in this world. In fact, when my sheikh, when I asked him if I could come to America to move here, normally I'm a very independent kind of person. I used to just tell my sheikh that I'm going somewhere and he would make dua for me, as long as, it was a good decision. But when I was coming to America, I told him, I want to go to America and this is the offer that I have and so on and so forth, and these are the benefits I see, but I'm only going to go if you tell me I can go, because I'm going to need du'as in that country. Because, I just don't, that country, you're basically to the wolves. There's just too much pressure on you to change and so on and so forth. So he said, no, go with the intention to establish a madrasa. Now, I don't know when that's going to take place because of where I am, but inshallah, that's basically my goal, is to try to convince people that it's important to study the deen and the knowledge. Just get them exposed. Just give them books or something that will expose them to lectures or whatever, that will expose them to the path of tawakkul and path of importance of deen and of knowledge, and then show the best example for yourself that the more I study, the better I am. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for us. Okay, so Sheikh Nu gives lessons on a Ihya Ulumuddin Sunni path. I understand what has been discussed. I was just looking for good points for people to bring these up to me. No, I understand, and exactly, that's what I said in the beginning. Because mashallah, you yourself are a good example. Where were you going to school before? If you don't mind sharing that. Right, you were going to school in Georgetown, and what were you studying for? There you go. Typical. The father's a doctor. Typical, Indian Pakistani family wanting to make their children the liar and the doctor, as they say. And you stopped halfway in between. You went to a madrasa, mashallah. So, that's really inspiring. That's really inspiring, inshallah. Allah accept from you. So yeah, I understand. I don't think you need to ask me. You're better than all of us in that sense. And you've been through the path. I think you should be consulted on this, right? So, if we want our children to study deen, does that mean we must start at a young age or after completing school, for example? It is so difficult, not widely available to children to study the deen. No, you should start from early on. Start teaching your children Quran. Start teaching your children all of these things from a young age, so at least they get inspired to do it. You see, once I asked a scholar that came to this country, I said, we want to establish a madrasa and so on. He said, you know what? There's no way you're going to be able to establish a madrasa and have people come there if the kids from a young age have not been exposed to Islamic sciences, because it's going to be completely something foreign to them. He said, first focus on establishing what they call the maktab system, the kutab system, for the younger kids, that they go through their basic foundations of faith, just understanding their basic fiqh and so on, whether it's in the weekend or it should be every day. In this area, it's a small area, but alhamdulillah, we have classes 4 days a week for about 2 hours each. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday after school, 4:30 to 6:15, right? And on Saturday morning for 2 hours or 2.5 hours, right? And basically what we teach in there is that we have 2 sections. The first session we have 50 minutes or so. We have Quran and we have surahs, right? And basically Quran with tajweed. And then in the next section we have, on one day we have fiqh, on one day we have history, seerah, whatever it is, different subjects. On one day we have Arabic as a language, that we only did afterwards once they understood how to read it and so on. And then we have one day question and answers, just general discussion and so on. Then we have akhlaq, adab and aqidah. So we've gone through a lot of things. So you need to do it at home in the weekend. Try to establish a class. Get somebody, if there's a alim in the area, scholar in the area, get them to help out. Our teacher tells us that in Turkey they send the smartest students to study medicine law, whereas those who are not as bright send them to become the imams. A sad fact, as our past was all about the brightest who in the madrasas. Exactly, you hit it on the head. This is exactly what's happening nowadays. When their children is a bit out of line, right? When a child is a bit out of line, they say, oh, send him to the madrasa, he'll get sorted out. He goes and spoils everybody else there. Sometimes he gets sorted out though, right? So, sorry for taking much more of your time today, but I think this was really important. It's not just in Turkey or whatever, it's actually a problem in the world because people are just so focused on the world. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this, that you guys are going to become weak because this is a time when, this is a time called, the problem of the people is hubb ad-dunya wa karahiyatul maut, the love of the world and the hatred for death. And this is what we're dealing with. Anyway, unfortunately, people cringe at the thought of starting the kids early on deen. Even many who have been raised in the West, they don't want to push their kids away from deen too early from past experiences when their parents pushed Islam on them and they were pushed away from deen. How can we alter that mentality? You have to prove it. You have to prove it, and the way to do it is not, to not make the same mistakes our parents did of forcing. That's the difference. As long as you don't force, right? As long as you don't make the same mistakes in the way they did it, you explain it. You see, we're going to be we're in a better position to explain to our children because we can speak the same language. Our parents who didn't speak English in the way that was proper, we thought of Islam as some cultural thing, and that's why a lot of the first generation here, they hate anything which is Arab, they hate anything which is Indian, Pakistani, because they feel that, they just feel that just talks about the way their parents speak, the accent they speak in, and so on. We're in a different position where we can speak at their level. We understand the things that they understand, right? So that's why it's different. Anyway, whoever has to leave, please go. I'm just going to read this last part, and then we should finalize this. If I can do it over again, I will really appreciate learning Deen first, and you will appreciate after learning the Deen, you see worldly things differently, and know that Allah is the one that moves you and make things happen in His own way. I learned that Allah told the angels to help the ones who work for deen and leave the ones into the dunya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept from all of us, and Allah allow us to alter our situation to make it better. Wa akhiru da'wana anna alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hmm.